Hey nerds, Farmer Jesse here. Welcome to Growers Daily, your daily dose of ecological farming insight. It is Wednesday, June 4th, 2025, and today I have another special treat for you all. You know what a bird nerd I am, so I got a hold of the Cornell Lab of Ornithology to see if they had someone who might want to chat with me about birds and what growers should know about bird populations and also what growers can do to help. And the good folks over there at Cornell Lab of Ornithology found me arguably the greatest person who has ever been found for that specific of a chat. Also a farmer herself, Becca Rodomsky-Bish, project leader for the Great Backyard Bird Count and Garden for Birds. And we cover the current state of birds, what growers can do to help birds, and how to monitor their progress. This is an amazing chat with lots of information that I had not considered when it comes to birds. So let's do it. All right, Becca, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me, Jesse. I'm really excited to be here.
And I'm really excited to have you. And I love, we were talking off air just a second ago that I can hear birds. And that is very exciting because that's going to be a big part of our conversation today. So maybe let's start with you and just telling us a little bit about yourself and what you do sort of professionally.
Sure. So I'm at the Cornell Lab of Ornithology, which is a pretty large research organization in upstate New York. That's where our home offices are. It's the home of Merlin, Bird ID app, and eBird, which might be tools that your listeners are familiar with. And I work on a couple of different projects at the Cornell Lab. I am the project leader for the Great Backyard Bird Count, which some of your listeners may have participated in or heard of. It runs in February. It's a 4-day kind of bird bonanza extravaganza. Historically, it was mostly US and Canada, but now we're global. So really, really fun. And then I also manage another project that is in its sort of infancy. We're growing it literally right now, called Garden for Birds. And that's an effort to try to engage people in more bird-friendly behaviors like gardening so that we can get on the right page of bringing birds back. Because right now, they're in a lot of trouble.
Yeah. Well, and we're going to get into a little bit of that. So maybe, and also big fans of the Merlin app. And I'm very curious about this Garden for Birds program. So anyway, we can get into all that. But first, I thought maybe we could start with, I really love birds. I'm always excited every spring when I'm just seeing so many new birds coming through. And I thought maybe we could start this conversation with just a little bit about the current state of birds in North America, at least. What are some trends that growers, people in general, should be aware of in the avian world?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I think I'm a farmer too. You and I chatted about that a little bit when we were making this call. But birds are really beneficial to farmers, and probably most farmers know that, right? Because they see a lot of birds when they're out in their fields. But that's one of the biggest plugs. Where there are birds, we should be happy because it means ecologically some things are humming along. And the state of the birds currently, based on the 2025 report that came out actually just a couple months ago, the birds are declining. Even our most common birds are declining. And I know that your farmers probably are all over the US and perhaps into Canada, but grassland birds, which probably affect several farmers that are growing in the middle states, are particularly in trouble and in decline. And what that concerns me, grassland birds concern me, aerial insectivores concern me. These are a lot of the species that really are beneficial to a lot of us that are growing crops because they're sort of natural pest managers, right? They're the ones that are doing a lot of the foraging in a lot of the grasslands and the edge habitats and the forest ecosystems that often are sort of around our farms. And so even birds that 10, 15, 20 years ago, their populations seem to be doing okay. We're actually starting to see them decline, like juncos, right? We all see juncos. It seems like there's a million juncos. Actually, where they're most abundant is actually where we're seeing their declines happening the most significantly. So we need to really be paying attention to this, right? The whole stereotypical canary in a coal mine is actually true, and we don't need to take them into mines anymore. They're in our habitats and their ecosystems, but they're in fewer numbers, and that should be giving farmers and really everybody pause.
I have a couple questions here, but maybe the first one is, can you give us an idea of what does decline look like? what are we talking? I don't know, maybe something that we can relate to in terms of like what size of decline, what percentage, what does it look like?
Sure.
Um,
So in the State of the Birds report, they identified tipping point species, and there's about 42 tipping point species that are like really in big trouble. There's sort of a middle layer that's about 30, 37, 38, and then there's another 30 different species. So you add those up, we're at almost 100 different species in North America that are in tipping point declines. And what that means is we've lost about 50% of their populations in the last 50 years. So we're not net gaining birds, we're net losing birds at a pretty startling rate. And it's not just, the birds that we would see maybe in the most remote places. These are birds that we really should be seeing in and around our properties. Grosbeaks, towhees, those that are in prairie lands, bobolinks, meadowlarks. I mean, these are birds that were common in our landscapes that we are not seeing much at all anymore.
uh, I mean, that's incredibly tragic news, really. As a bird fan, but just in general, as a grower, as a member of the earth. But can you talk? You mentioned earlier the grassland species. Do we have, as one of the ones that are maybe most in danger or are seeing the greatest declines? Do we have insight into why? Like, what's causing that? Is it? Yeah, maybe I'd let you speak to that.
Yeah, I'm so glad you asked that question because as a farmer, this is one of the groups of birds I've embraced and I'm really actively managing for on my 80 acres. It's really mowing cycles, to be quite honest, and not just mowing cycles, but obviously grasslands are one of the most viable habitats for us to be growing a lot of produce at mass scale. So that habitat loss is a big one. But second to that is how we're managing our grasslands that we have on our properties for those of us that raise livestock. In my situation, I don't have livestock, but I have a farmer down the road who does. And so he uses my grasslands to feed his animals. So I'm in upstate New York, and when we first moved back here, he was mowing those grasslands whenever it was convenient for his schedule. And about 6 or 7 years ago, I put the kibosh on that, and I said, "Listen, you can't mow my fields until August 1st, because that is when we're going to be in a safety zone for those eastern meadowlarks and bobolinks to be done with their nesting cycles." And so I'm super happy to report that I had not seen eastern meadowlarks on this property for over a decade. And I saw my first one again last year. And I am monitoring my bobolinks, and every year I'm pretty much about 32 fledged last year. And that's just because I'm letting them finish their reproductive cycles, sometimes two of them, actually, two nesting cycles in my grasslands. So mowers or people that are mowing their fields, if they are, whether it's for livestock or in my case, maybe you're kind of collaboratively working with people down the road that have livestock. If you really schedule your mow based on reproductive cycles, that can make a huge benefit to birds.
Yeah, that's so interesting. We have a back pasture that we don't mow very much, and last year was the first year that we mow it like once a year, kind of late as we
Right.
can. Our neighbors really want to mow it all the time, but I'm always like, let's leave it. And last year was the first year I heard the bobwhite quail back there, which is
Cool.
obviously, as you know, one in serious decline.
Yes.
And that was very cool to hear. And so that's something I use when I'm talking to my neighbors. It's like, that's not something you've probably heard since your youth, uh, you
Exactly.
know, because that is a really important bird in general. And I think those are really, yeah. I mean, that sort of stuff I hadn't ever really thought about mowing. Like if you'd given me 20 guesses, I don't know that I would have gotten there. And so, but you're talking in general, like people that just mow, like just want it nice and clean, but also haymaking and certain
Yes.
types of grazing, all those things are all included in that.
Yep, absolutely. And here's the unfortunate kicker, right? Like I get that it degrades the value of your grass when you let it go a little bit later, and that's the real tension, right? There is definitely some tension between what may be better for birds and biodiversity and what we are also trying to produce a yield out of because of the quality of the grass or the quality of the feed that we're trying to give to our animals. So I get it. It's a real tension. Um, and I'm in upstate New York. That date is going to be dependent on where you are, right? So, you're growing in Kentucky, right? Is that right?
Correct. Yep.
Yeah, so
Yep.
you're further south. Your mow date is going to be slightly different than and mine, and then same if there's a farmer north and a farmer south. So I think the USDA has actually, or they did, have some really good maps that give farmers sort of recommended mow dates. But if you like grassland bird species, and even I have a 20-acre grassland on one side of our house property and 20 or 30 on the other. And it's incredible how much you can actually encourage birds to nest if you are leaving that grass there, because so many of the other farmers around me are not doing that, right? They're mowing in July, sometimes like in June, which like breaks my heart. So it's incredible how much impact you can have on a small space, even.
And yeah, that is so fascinating. All right. Well, we're going to take a quick break. And when we come back, we will discuss a little bit more about what growers like ourselves can do to be helpful. BRB. Today's episode of Growers Daily is brought to you by Peaceful Heritage Nursery. If you're looking for hardy and resilient fruit trees, berry plants, or pawpaw trees, then check out Peaceful Heritage Nursery. Peaceful Heritage Nursery LLC is a mail-order nursery shipping premium quality fruit trees and berry plants across the USA. They specialize in resilient, non-GMO plant genetics for small growers. Their diverse selection includes berries, cold hardy figs, passion fruits, gumi, mulberry, and much more. They're famous for their diverse selection of premium quality grafted pawpaw trees. 5-star Google ratings and customer testimonials attest to their commitment to excellence in quality and service. Find them at peacefulheritage.com and join the mailing list. Once again, find them at peacefulheritage.com. Use the promo code NOTILL for 10% off your first order. Today's episode is also brought to you by Precip. Precip is billed as the easiest way to keep track of rainfall, and that is true, but it is a lot more than that. Sure, you can open the app and immediately see accurate rainfall totals, but you can also save locations to see historical rainfall totals, wind speeds, and all sorts of other nerdy details. Their radar-based technology means you can ditch the rain gauge. I usually have to do that anyway because the kids find a way to smash it with a baseball bat. You can ditch the rain gauge and start tracking rain and other growing conditions all on your phone. Click the link in the show notes to find out more. All right, back to the show. All right, so the thing I'm always wondering is, when we're sort of having these conversations, beyond like the mowing cycles, what more can growers do or be doing to be helpful in terms of increasing/sustaining bird populations? Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I got so many thoughts on that. So you stop me when I've met my fill. So many of your farmers I know, because I watched a couple of your great episodes, they're not using pesticides. We're minimizing any kind of artificial synthetics in our gardens. That's huge. There's direct links to bird mortality and certainly raising young when we are putting chemicals into our environment. So that's a big one, and that's an easy one, and I think most of your listeners are already doing that. Depending on the size of the land that people are managing, putting in intentional prairie strips, encouraging and maintaining hedgerows, super important. I grow on a relatively small scale. I feed my family and 3 other families. And so, I have the capacity to leave pretty expansive amounts of forest habitat, edge habitat. I'm always including and actually increasing my hedge habitat. So like, allowing my red-osier dogwoods to do their thing, allowing my 9-barks to take off, right? Encouraging these shrubs that actually get big and fill in, because they attract pollinators, they attract all kinds of insects, and all of those insects attract all kinds of birds. So not only encouraging that habitat, but making sure that habitat's as native as possible. So a hedgerow of honeysuckle, okay, yeah, some things will use it, but a hedgerow of a native shrub is going to be a powerhouse for you in terms of bird resource, over something like an invasive autumn olive or honeysuckle or Rosa multiflora. Those are all a pain in the butt, and I know that people are always managing their invasive, so invasive management's another thing that people can be doing. Discourage the invasives, encouraging the natives, and letting them do their thing, and integrating them as a part of your farm in more of a permaculture style, so that you're really trying to support all life with the land that you are managing.
And where do things like, fruit trees, those sort of agricultural, more perennial products sort of fit into that?
They do. Absolutely. I will. I'm also very happy to report that I saw my first orchard oriole in my orchard last year, right?
Cool.
And
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
orioles are, and I know again, producers might be like, "Urgh, orchard orioles, they eat my food. But it's a good sign if the orchard orioles are there because they're also going to eat a lot of insects. So you're not going to maybe have to do as much insect management in your orchard. So yes, absolutely. My blueberries, my currants, my raspberries, all that stuff has a lot of birds on it. And quite frankly, I often, this is not as easy to do with individual homeowners, which is what I work a lot with, but it's a lot
Hmm.
easier to do with farmers. Grow a lot of it. And then you get to share, right? Like it's okay that the birds eat some of my produce. That's a part of the exchange that we're in. And I can recover from that because I have a lot of bushes. I have more bushes than I need. So, that kind of mentality of don't just plant it for you, plant one or two extra for the various other organisms that are going to ultimately help your farm, and they're also going to take some of your product at the same time.
Yeah, no, I think that's a really good way of looking at it. And we also saw an orchard oriole in our pear and apple trees the other day, and I was like, oh, orchard oriole. Yeah, that makes sense. It was so exciting because we have cardinals, we have other pretty birds here, but that one, like the color, I was like, was that a robin? But the color is so unique.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
yeah, which is so fun. So infrastructural things, maybe I'm thinking maybe like birdhouses and that sort of
Mhm.
stuff. Is there anything in the infrastructural vein that farmers could be looking at in terms of management?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm glad you asked that question. Um, I'm always thinking about more like habitat based, but there are things you can add too. So nest boxes are really great. Those are really great for a lot of our aerial insectivores. So tree swallows will use nest boxes. Bluebirds, eastern, western bluebirds will use nest boxes. All kinds of different species that will be natural insect eaters on your farm. The only thing I will say about nest boxes that is always a word of caution is to just make sure you put them up in a way that is ecologically beneficial for the birds so that you're not creating ecological traps, is the term that we use in our industry. So, meaning, let's say you put up a box, Eastern bluebird box, for example, all of them have sort of slightly different size holes and different sort of ideal construction. We have a great project at the lab called Nest Watch that has for those people that like to be handy, you can actually build different size nest boxes for different species you're trying to attract, and it'll tell you the exact dimensions to use and how to make them as safe as possible. But let's say you just tack it onto a tree. You're like, cool, I'm creating some like nesting cavity for birds and biodiversity. And I've had this happen to me. You may be very disappointed that some local squirrels or chipmunks or raccoons or various snakes have actually gotten into that nest box because you didn't put a predator guard on it. So you should not mount nest boxes on trees or fence posts, to be quite honest. You want to put them on poles, usually sort of with some open space around them, and then on the website you can look it up, but there's like baffle predator guards. They look almost like the ends of chimneys, and you can put that around the pole, and most animals cannot crawl up them. So I'm a big fan of infrastructure. I'm a big fan of nest boxes, especially if you have a property with not a lot of trees where sort of natural cavities might exist. But do try to make sure that you're building them and setting them up in such a way that you're maximizing the success of those fledglings.
That is a really good point because I have several nest boxes that are on cedar posts.
Mm-hmm.
And I've had the thought before because we have so many snakes here that could be an issue, or our cats or whatever wants to get in there could climb up those cedar posts. So I hadn't thought about blockers. That's a good thing that I need to be keeping in mind.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we're going to take one more quick break. And when we come back, how to know if we're doing a good job at all of this, monitor those things. Be right
Mm-hmm.
back. Today's episode is brought to you by Farmhand. I started a CSA to grow food and build community, not to drown in admin work. Spreadsheets, emails, and pack lists take up too much time. If I could spend less time at my desk and more in the field, that'd be a win. Enter Farmhand. Farmhand automates billing, newsletters, websites, and member support, saving CSA farmers 20 plus hours a week. Focus on farming, not paperwork. See how Farmhand can help. Book a one-on-one demo with founder Ari at farmhand.partners/no-till. That's farmhand.partners/no-till. Today's episode is also brought to you by FarmRaise. Still struggling with your balance sheet? Your lender's asking for a balance sheet and you're stuck with a spreadsheet mess or guessing your numbers? FarmRaise Tracks takes the stress out of farm finance. With one click, you can generate an accurate, up-to-date balance sheet that shows your assets, liabilities, and equity. No accounting degree required. You'll be ready for loan applications, tax season, or just a clearer picture of where your farm stands. Join thousands of farmers using Tracks to build stronger businesses. Get 20% off with code NOTIL20 at farmraise.com for the lifetime of your membership. All right, back to the show. All right, I thought maybe we could spend this last segment talking about tools and tips for monitoring bird populations. I know you mentioned Merlin and the other one that, eBird. And, maybe we could talk about, in fact, maybe we could start there. Talk about what those both are and the kind of differences and maybe how they work together.
Yeah, absolutely. So if listeners are sort of newer to birds, maybe, you've noticed a couple here or there, but you really don't know names, I would recommend exploring the Merlin Bird ID app. Both of them are free. Both of them are available. Just make sure you're downloading the one from the Cornell Lab of Ornithology, because there are a couple out there that you can kind of get misdirected with. But Merlin Bird ID app is a fun tool. You can identify birds a couple different ways. You can either record their sound, which is sort of the default that a lot of people, it's like this mind-blowing moment where you're like, oh my God, there are so many birds around me. I had no idea. Just by hitting record, it'll identify the birds in real time for you, and it'll highlight the song. So like if you're trying to learn your bird songs, you can go back and be like, yeah, I hear that all the time. I didn't know that was an American robin. So the sound ID is cool. You can also walk through and describe where you saw the bird, what color it was, what it was doing, and that'll give you a whole list of ideas of birds that it might be in your area. And what's cool about these tools is it's personalized to the area you're in and the time of year. So like that orchard oriole that you saw, Jesse, you wouldn't get that in the winter up here because those birds are in Central and South America, right? So the tool is really smart. It knows the date, it knows where you are, and it'll help you identify and hone in on birds pretty quickly. So Merlin's fun. And then you can tell us, you can actually save your sightings with Merlin, and that helps sort of the machine learning process that feeds Merlin. So Merlin is based on thousands, approaching millions of different submissions, and that's how it's able to actually give you your options. And then eBird and Merlin work in sync with each other because eBird is a tool for people that maybe know their birds a little better. You don't get prompted with sounds or pictures. You get prompted with just tell us the bird name. So you kind of got to know the name in order to use eBird effectively. And what's cool about eBird is you can record how many birds that you are seeing. So like in my situation on my property, I'm actively managing for birds, and I use my eBird lists every year to see, okay, what bird arrived when? Is that early this year? Is that later this year? Am I seeing more bobolinks, or is it just me? How many did I get last year? And so eBird is nice because you can record the numbers of birds, and then you can year over year or month over month, whatever kind of management or observation you're sort of focused on, you can use that data to inform, is it working? Like, am I seeing more of different types of birds in general? Or am I seeing, like you said, you have an orchard oriole in your orchard. Maybe your orchard's young, and for the first 2 years, you don't get any orioles. And then all of a sudden you're 6, 7, and 8, you're like getting them every year and they're nesting. And it's like, boom, like there's direct evidence that what you're doing is having an impact.
That's very cool. Is there anything else when it comes to monitoring considerations that farmers should take into, things that they should take into consideration? You mentioned time of year, you mentioned, particular species. Like, what else should farmers look for in terms of, managing their progress or monitoring their progress rather?
Yeah, I think it's sort of it comes down a little bit to farmer decision and sort of what their goals are and what their aspirations are with their property. One thing that I know that is important, and eBird data has been used for this in different capacities, is let's say you have a farmer who Maybe they're dealing with some challenges around with other farmers or their neighbors, or there's maybe some land management things being put forward. If you have historical eBird data to be able to say, hey, listen, that's not a good development plan, or that fill in the blank, whatever kind of industry might move in and affect sort of your bird population. If you can have that kind of data in your pocket, like I'm a farmer, I've been monitoring this space for X amount of years, here's the data, right? Then you can speak to some of the pushback we can sometimes get as farmers about how we're using our land, what's it really supporting. You have the data right there. You can use that data then to sort of really have like concrete metrics. Like, I am watching this property and here's what I'm seeing. And here's what other ecological species might be affected if we were to make that decision or move forward with that policy. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah. I think I love that sort of practical use of this. I mean, nerdy idea. Like, we all love birds. We have affection for the ecology and seeing them around and seeing what they can do for gardens and what they can do for us in general. But also, here's a way that you can actually utilize this information to be potentially helpful for you now or down the road.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah, and if you don't have that information, you're just, you're spitting in the wind in terms of trying to convince people that it's legitimate. But once it's an eBird, it's yours. It's like your own database. And, for people that are really, you get into this, your farm could even become a hotspot, right? eBird has what's called hotspots, which means areas where we're seeing huge amounts of biodiversity within a certain area. And, not only do you get to be kind of that bird nerd that says, yeah, my farm's a hotspot, you're gonna have people checking out your property and being like, oh, that's cool. What's that farmer doing that they're able to attract so much biodiversity? I've actually so I live in an area that has a growing Amish population, and every once in a while, an Amish person will come down my driveway on their bike and they'll be like, hey, I saw an eBird that you saw. And, Evening Grosbeaks was the most recent one. Can I see them? So it's kind of fun, right? It develops this community of people who are also paying attention, and your property could kind of become a little bit of a destination point for your local community.
I love that. That's like a challenge for everyone to be a hotspot for the birding world.
Exactly.
That seems like a good goal for us all. Um, Maybe the last thing would be is there anything that we didn't talk about in terms of maybe habitat or infrastructure or fodder that you do or that you think about as a gardener or grower in terms of bird management, increasing those, just like bird management?
Bird stuff. There's two. And this is additional infrastructure stuff. I'll start with the one that's less contentious. Windows. So protecting our windows, those of us I have actually a very new greenhouse that I need to do this to. I haven't done it yet, but making sure that your home or greenhouses or any kind of other farm infrastructure isn't actually creating an ecological trap, meaning birds might be colliding with the glass. I've found two. I will admit this, right? I am not perfect. I have found two dead birds, a robin and a junco, outside my greenhouse that I know collided with the glass. So there are different types of things you can do to windows to protect them. American Bird Conservation, ABC, is probably one of the best resources if people want a resource to go to. They have different films you can put on. I actually did a project on the home in the early spring where I used a template and put dots on my windows. You can buy strips that are dots, but you can also paint things on your windows. Basically, glass, birds can't. If you go outside and you look at your windows and it looks like a tree, the reflection of clouds, that's what birds see. They can't differentiate glass. They see very similarly to us. So window collisions are a big deal, and they're a big problem. They kill billions of birds a year. So that's one thing that farmers can do. Just make sure that you're not, if birds are striking your windows, there are things you can do so that they don't do that. So that's the less contentious one. And the second one, I'm going to put out there because I heard another episode where this is something you do, and I used to do it too, and I'm still wondering if I need to do it as a farmer, but outdoor cats. This is the big one, right? And as a farmer, my cat, when I had an outdoor cat, which I don't anymore, but I did because I work at the lab, and I've had to like bite the bullet on that one. They have a job to play. on a farm, right? Like my vole population did not exist. My cat was always killing voles, killing chipmunks. It was a mammal predator. And I lost my cat a couple years ago, so I did not replace it with an outdoor cat. And now my vole problems in my all my root crops, my carrots, my beets, it's awful. It's really awful. But I'm also not getting ruby-throated hummingbirds dropped on my front stoop anymore, or yellow warblers, or, like birds. Cats are predators. It's what they do. It's not their fault. It's what they do, and they will kill birds. Whether or not they bring them home to you depends sort of on the cat. But outdoor cats, I get it. As a farmer, there's a tension there, but it's also really important to understand that they are probably going to be killing birds too.
Yeah, no, it's a good thing to keep in mind. Our cat, thankfully, is older and she is not as aggressive as she used to be towards those things. But there have been times where she's brought home birds, and there's no way to tell a cat, no, we don't do that. But as much as I wish we could.
Exactly.
But no, that's a great point. And anytime you hear me say anything that may not be helpful to birds, you have to let me know. So I really appreciate that. Becca, this has been so fascinating. I really appreciate your time and all of your work. I will make sure to put links in the show notes for for everything we've talked about today. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you, Jesse. It's been a pleasure, and I love farmers. Go farm. More farms, big farms, small farms, they're all important.
Awesome. Thank you. All right, I hope you enjoyed that chat. I certainly did. I got so much out of that. I will make sure to link all the things that we talked about from the Cornell Lab of Ornithology and the Merlin app and all those things in the show notes. Don't forget, we at No-Till Growers are now officially a 501c3, so donations are tax deductible and greatly appreciated. Please make sure to like and subscribe and or follow wherever you're getting this podcast. That's an easy way to help us out. Enormous thank you to all of our show sponsors. And if you'd ever like to sponsor the show, you can reach out to Farmer Michelle at no-tillgrowers.com. Huge shouts to Willie Breeden for the theme music, Mike Hilbert for the production help and editing, and the team at No-Till Growers. Also, shouts to Epidemic Sound for the background music that you can hear. Pick up a copy of the Living Soil Handbook by me, I wrote that one, or The Seed Farmer by Dan Brisebois, he wrote that one, at no-tillgrowers.com to show us a little support. Big thank you to everyone over at patreon.com/no-tillgrowers, where at a certain level, or if you just bump up from one level to another, or you sign up in the month of June, you get a big shout out on the show. So big shout outs today to Vesalaya Gardens, Cedric Reed, Bill Price, William Wiley Madrow, Richia Grant, Wish I Started 20 Years Ago, Dwight Yoder, Honey Works, Lynn Tompkins, Steve Hurlbut, Rebecca S., Mark Ravenel, Lee Shelley, Brian McCarthy, Larry Shepard, Marsh and Cindy. I always like saying that one, Marsh and Cindy. DP, Kat Brannigan, Little Row Farms, Hank Zecca, Ashley Sharp, Jill Crosby, Scott Roser, Norskgard Farm, Laura Britton, Alberto Diaz, Peter Broad, Jason Ruel, Earthcare Farmer Jane Murner, Derek Page, Meredith Light from Granite Springs Farm, Grown Up Farm, Bob and Ann Patton of Hexhamshire Organics, Jared Kirst at Rivendell Farm, Steve Larson, Fiona and Donnie of Firefly Farm, and Jen Lawrence. Thank you all. So, all right. Back in our story in the town, everyone is kind of going about their business, their typical work days. When they hear the subtle rumbling coming from the forest, it grows louder and louder. And of course, the townspeople have been trained for such an occasion to quickly camouflage their work and hide their underground houses. Gardens can be covered quickly with blankets covered in sticks and leaves. Animals can be quickly herded using well-trained dogs and a creative gate system that can rapidly squeeze them into a hidden paddock. You'd love it. It's genius. When your life is kind of hiding from the world, you develop some skills. But anyway, it's hard to anticipate a large 250 horsepower tractor with a seed drill attached barreling straight towards your town. And just before the farmer reaches the first house after knocking down trees and just barreling through this forest, he manages to get control of the tractor and stops, but the soft, loamy soil of the garden that he is parked on sinks his tires, and suddenly he's stuck. He's going to have to call for help. The townspeople have to make a decision. Risk others coming and finding them, or take a prisoner. That is for tomorrow on the Kansantonians Make a Decision. Yep. All right. Thanks for watching and or listening. We will see you then.